Welcome to this lecture where we are going to see the error detecting codes. As the name indicates, these are the codes which will be able only to detect that the error has happened while the data was being transmitted. They will not be able to correct the errors. Previous to this, we have seen the error correcting codes, or the example of Hamming code was seen as an error correcting codes. Obviously, so that Hamming code was able to even correct the errors. So in that discussion, we have seen what is called as a block code, a systematic code, and linear code. To revise, block codes are will be having what is called as the redundant bits, the check bits, which will be the function of the data bits. The check bits will be calculated as a function of the block data bits. In the case of systematic codes, these are the codes which will transmit the M data bits along with the parity or the check bits. So systematic code will have the input data in addition to the redundancy. And linear codes are the codes which wherein the redundancy or the check bits will be calculated based on a linear function, for example XOR of the data bits. That means the data bits will be XORed to calculate the output. So today we are going to see some error detecting codes, for example parity, checksum, and the final is cyclic redundancy checks, or CRC in short. So in the case of parity code or parity bit error detection, from the previous very important equation that you have seen in the previous lecture or the previous video, I will appreciate if you don't know this, you go and first visit that video, get the meaning of this particular equation from there, and then come here. So in short, this particular equation means that given the value or the number of M data bits, we can calculate the value of how many check bits we require, minimum number of check bits, that is R. In short, we go on putting the value of 0 onwards in this R such that the minimum value of R is found where the equation becomes satisfied. So with that equation, if the value of M is 1000 bits, obviously R, that means the redundant bits, check bits, which are required is the number of redundant bits is 10. So for every 1000 bits in one single block, for example, a block is going to contain 1000 bits of data M, then the check bits required for that single block of 1000 bits is 10, which is R. So with that relation, 1 megabit of data would require 10 kilobits. To detect a block with a single bit of error, however, only one parity bit would suffice. What we have seen previously, with this relation, we need 10 check bits for a data bit size of 1000 bits. But had that been the situation that there could have been only one single bit error, then we can also use a check bit of one single bit to detect that parity. Obviously, one parity bit would suffice. So with this logic, for every 1000 blocks, each containing 1000 bits, where the bit error rate is 10 raised to minus 6, that means for every 1 megabit, only one bit can be in error. With this logic, only one extra block would have to be retransmitted. What I mean by that, for example, if you are transmitting 1000 blocks, each of 1000 bits, where the error rate that can be only 10 raised to 6, 10 raised to minus 6, sorry. Only one extra block would have to be retransmitted. For example, there could have been only one block containing 1 bit error, and that means for that block we'll have to transmit that block once again, and while transmitting that block we'll transmit the parity bit as well. That means 1001 bits. The overhead in this logic is the retransmission of one parity block, 1000 bits. Why this is there? Because for all the 10 blocks which will calculate 1 bit for one individual block, so there'll be 1000 bits. So these are the parity block. This is the one single parity block containing the parity bits, 1000 bits. And if there has been an error in those 1000 blocks, that would have been detected at the receiver, and that would have been retransmitted. And while being retransmitted, that will be the block 1000 with its parity bit 1, that means 1001, and that amounts to just 2001 bits versus the 10 kilobits that we have discussed here with this relation. We have discussed that with this relation for block size of 1000, and if there are 1 megabit, that the number of redundant bits or the check bits would be 10 kilobit. So in comparison to 10 kilobits, with this logic of single parity, we simply require just 2001 bits, which is almost 20% of the previous logic, this logic. That's a efficiency, we can say. Now there is a problem with this particular method when there are multiple bit errors. We have previously seen just the case where a single bit of error is there. Now when there are burst errors, that means the errors are in multiple contiguous bits, we can say multiple bits in short. So let us say, for example, we'll consider this particular thing. Now a block of data is to be transmitted. We will divide that into some rows and columns. So for example, there are n rows and k columns. So here, rather than obviously we have seen previously that one single row was being transmitted. Now we will implement another logic which is called as interleaving, so that will not transmit one single row at a time. Rather we will simply we will calculate a parity for each individual column first. What you have previously seen, for each individual block we would be sending a parity bit. We will not do that. What we would do is a change that is called as interleaving. For this matrix of n bits by k bits, that is called as interleaving, and the interleaving parity is computed in this way. So for each individual, we will rather first arrange that as n by k as just told, and then for each individual column we will calculate the parity in the previous method, so that it becomes even, for example. So at the end we will also have one more row of parity bits in addition to the original data bits. So while sending, we will send one row at a time, like this. For example, the data was network, network, and for corresponding letters, the data bit generated is like this. For n, we are having this data, e this data, and so on up till k. And while when that was encoded here with those parity bits, each individual row was then transmitted, and when the last row was transmitted, then we transmitted the parity bits or the row containing the parity bits as well, like this. Now, while in the transmission, we are now checking what happens if burst error occurs. Burst error means that there are multiple bits in the transmitted data in error. Multiple bits are in error. And burst error is basically defined by a group of bits in error where the first and the last bit are always 1, and there may be any combination of ones and zeros in between. So imagine now the situation is that the error there is an error in 7 such bits. There are 7 columns, and there is one error in 7 such bits, right from this place to this. Now in the previous case, where we were transmitting each individual block along with its parity that you have seen previously, this particular error wouldn't have been detected. Let me show you. For example, you concentrate on the second row. Here what has changed? So the data bits were 1 0 1, last 3, and that has changed to 0 1 1. So these two, well, these let me draw. Well, these two bits have changed here. They have changed their values. So 1 has changed to 0 and 0 is changed to 1. This is not changed, but the error starts with this. Now exactly what has happened, as those two bits have changed their value exactly opposite, I mean in the binary, 1 is going to change to 0 and 0 is only going to change to 1. But in effect, the parity is not changed, and that's why had that been the previous method, we wouldn't have detected this error in that particular block or row. Similarly, for the third row, the data was 1110 and that is changed to 1101. Once again, these two bits are in error exactly oppositely, and that's why once again the parity remains same for this row as well. Once again, that wouldn't have been detected in the previous method. Now what we are doing here is that we are not calculating the parity in horizontal way. We are rather calculating the parity in vertical way. For each individual column, we are calculating the parity. And that's how the parity block that was transmitted, that was received fortunately correctly. And here when the receiver calculates the parity, it comes to know that there is a problem here, because this particular value does not match with the actual calculated parity. This particular value does not match with the calculated parity of this column, and so on up till this. And this is how what I wanted to show you, that with this particular interleaving parity method, we can as well detect, we can also detect the multi-bit or the burst errors. That is the advantage over single bit parity detection, error detection. So here a burst error of length up to n plus 1 can be detected. Sorry, a burst error of length up till n, that means here 7 columns are there. So if there were 7 contiguous bits in error, that could have been detected. But had there been more than that, more than 7, so this bit is now, let us say for example, in error, so that 1 is changed to 0. Now that was not possible, because now in previously what happened, for every column there is only one single bit that is in error, and that's why that can be detected with this parity calculation. But now when the value of the burst error or the length of burst error goes beyond that n, that means the 8th bit, which is more than the number of columns here, that also is in error for this particular row. And when the length is more than 8 as well, for multiple rows beyond, there will be multiple bits in one single column which are in error, and that may make the parity of that column same, as we have seen in this case, horizontal way. That may here happen here in the vertical way. And that's why right from n plus 1 onwards, the errors may pass undetected. Now, for in the previous case, the probability that any column will pass will be taken as correct with multi-bit error is 0.5. If there was also error in this bit, that might have changed the parity, that might not have changed the parity. That's why the error in this column wouldn't have been detected by the receiver. Now for the multi-bit errors which are greater than n, there may be and in the worst case, if they are there in multiple columns or all the columns, for each individual column, let me tell you. Now there could be a situation. There are two possible situations. Either the number of errors make the original parity changed because there is odd number of errors, or they are such that they are even numbers, and that's why the original parity is not changed. And in that case, there are two situations. That's why the probability that a column may pass as error free when actually there were multiple errors, that probability is 0.5. Okay. Now for each individual column, it is 0.5 or 1/2, 1 by 2. And there are 7 columns. So the probability is 1 by 2 into 1 by 2. Okay, it is not actually letting me draw properly. Let me just tell you, for every column it is 1 by 2 or half, and that's why for 7 columns it is 1 by 2 into 1 by 2 7 times. That goes to 1 by 2, 1 by 2 raised to 7. So that means 2 raised to minus 7. For in any case, if there are, let us say for example, m columns or n columns, let us say, then the probability will be of a bad block, complete bad block being accepted where there were multi-bit errors. The bad block will be accepted as error free. That probability, as it is given here, which when there were 7 columns, that was 2 raised to minus 7, and when there are in general n columns, that probability will be 2 raised to minus n. That means as we go on increasing that number of columns, the probability becomes increasingly shorter. That means that this is one very good method of detecting properly. So basically there is one more method which is called as the checksum method. A group of parity bits is one example of checksum. The previous two methods were based on the parity calculation. So that is also one example of a checksum. Now basically there are even stronger mechanisms of checksum which are based on calculating the running sum of the data bits of the message being transmitted. Now this particular calculated checksum is placed at the end of the message in the form of the complementary sum. For example, if the sum happens to be 7, now that sum will be placed as minus 7. Now the message will be sent with that checksum. So when the message is received at the receiver, what receiver will do? It will once again calculate the checksum of the received data. Now let me tell you, the data with, for some reason this is not letting me draw properly. Let me tell you, the data along with the checksum will be transmitted. Now at the receiver will calculate the checksum once again. Now if the checksum happens to be 7, it will be put as the complementary, that means minus 7. So the calculated checksum plus the value of that checksum happens to be always 0. So at the receiver will simply implement this procedure. And in any case, there were some errors in the data while in the transit. The receiver will calculate the checksum for that, and that will evaluate to something other than the calculated checksum value at the sender, so that sum of those two things will not become 0 as it was there in the sender. So the checksum would be, for example, 6, and the transmitted checksum was in the previous case minus 7. That wouldn't make 0. So in this way, receiver will be able to detect the errors, in this case with the checksum. Now one example of checksum is checksum calculated in the internet error detection as part of the IP protocol. Basically it is done with the 16-bit words. It will also detect an error where the errors pass undetected with the parity methods. Now the checksum error would rather fail for the cases where first there are some deletion or addition of 0 data. Means there are some additions or there may be some deletion of data, but the value is 0. The second possibility is that the message, the parts of the message are swapped, so that the first part is taken at the end and the last part was taken at the first part. In that case as well, the checksum method will fail. Third probability is that the message splices with parts of two packets put together. In that case as well, the checksum would fail. And these are the cases which are caused by the faulty hardware. These three types of possibilities may be there if the hardware is faulty. As we have seen as IP checksum, the second checksum method is the Fletcher's checksum. It is due to Fletcher. Now that includes positional component. Previously we have seen that the IP checksum cannot detect when the parts of the message itself are swapped, so their positions are swapped. But this method by due to Fletcher can also detect those particular swapping errors, because it includes the positional component, adding the product of the data and its position to the running sum. It does not only calculates the addition of the product of the data component, but it also has got the position in the checksum, and that's why that swapping of the data part can be detected. But there is even stronger method of checksum, which is called as cyclic redundancy check, or CRC in short, which is also known as polynomial code. In this method, a k-bit frame is regarded as the coefficient list of a polynomial with k terms, obviously ranging from x raised to k minus 1 to x raised to 0. So for example, had there been 6 bits in the term or the data, that would take somewhere from x raised to 5 up till x raised to 1. That means 1. So in this example, we can see that. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So these are the 6 bits of data to be transmitted. So that can be represented as a polynomial in this fashion. So the first one, 1 into x raised to 5, that there were 6 bits. So the first term will be x raised to 5, where the degree of that polynomial also becomes 5. The next term is 1, that's why 1 into x raised to the next power of x raised to 4. Next means 1 less than 5. Plus there was 0, so 0 into x raised to 3, so still there was 0, so on up till the last one, which happens to be 1 into x raised to 0. So this particular data stream of ones and zeros has been now defined with a polynomial of degree 5 because there were 6 bits here in the data. Now, in this CRC, this is done with modulo 2 arithmetic. What is modulo 2 arithmetic? The arithmetic operations like addition and subtraction are done with modulo 2 fashion, which are very much equivalent to what we would do in XOR operation, exclusive OR. Here the division or long division is also carried in the same fashion, except that the subtraction operation is again done modulo 2. Now the division will be the normal division as we do normally. But while in the division, what subtraction part we do, that subtraction part is once again done in the previous fashion, that will be only XOR operation. So let us see with this in some examples. So these are first two columns are the additions and the last two columns are the subtractions. So here, while this is modulo 2 additions and these are the modulo 2 subtractions. So if you can see, 1 plus 0 would make 1, 1 plus 1 would make 0 carry 1, but that carry is not seen here. So in this particular modulo 2 operations, the carries in the addition and the borrows in the subtraction are not considered, and that's how that simply becomes an XOR operation. That may be addition or that may be subtraction. If you go and see the details, you can check that. Here 1 plus 1 is 0 carry 1, even though the next 0 plus 0 only becomes 0. And in the case of addition, there are 4 possibilities that you know. So 0 plus 0, in the case of normal addition it is 0, and in the case of XOR also it is 0. The next possibility is both 1. In the case of XOR it is 0, and in the case of normal addition also it is 0, where the carry is not considered here in the addition. And in the interchanging case where either 1 is 1 as 0, the addition will be 1, and that is there as 1 in the XOR as well. That's why addition is like this. In the case of subtraction, well, 0 minus 0 is 0 and 1 minus 1 is also 0. But when there is, well, in the case of 1 minus 0, the operation is also 1. That is there in the XOR operation as well. Whereas in the case of 0 minus 1, the operation or the output becomes 1, discarding the borrow. You can see here. And that is there with XOR operation 0 and 1, 1. So this is how addition and subtraction are very much equivalent to XOR, or they are XOR operations. So in the case of CRC, we are not going to see how CRC is actually done, that method, the procedure in that method. The very much first requirement is that both the sender and the receiver must first agree with what is called as the generator polynomial, which is GX, generator polynomial, where that GX must be having the MSB and LSB bits 1. That must be 1. Those bits must be 1. That is the condition. Here, the CRC is computed for a frame of m bit length, which will obviously be corresponding to a polynomial mx, as we have seen previously. And that a polynomial mx has to be longer than the gx, which is initially decided by the two parties. Now, when the receiver receives the, now previously we need to know that when the sender calculates the checksum, basically it calculates that checksum by adding some redundant bits, and then those redundant bits and the initial bits is taken to be the actual bits to be computed for, and those bits are divided by gx at the center side. We'll see in detail afterwards, and the remainder would be then be discarded from the original computed polynomial. That makes that that polynomial to be integral multiple of gx. And that's why whenever the receiver receives that transmitted frame, when it also divides that checksum frame with gx, obviously that should not be, the division should not be other than 0. If that is other than 0, or the value is other than 0, that means there has been some transmission error. So the algorithm is something like this, which will clarify it in more degree. So let R be the degree of gx, that is the generator polynomial. And in that case, for example, previously you have seen that in this case there were 6 bits and the polynomial computed was like this, and we said that the degree is now 5. So R is now 5 here. So we will calculate 5, or we will append 5 zeros at the end of that polynomial. So append R0 bits to the lower order end of the frame. So it now contains m bits original data plus r bits which are just appended. The value is m plus r bits. And now that extended polynomial corresponds to x raised to r mx, where mx was the original polynomial and x raised to r is the, because we have appended r zeros, that's why the total polynomial now becomes x raised to r mx. Now divide this x raised to r mx by the generator polynomial gx using the modulo 2 division. So we will get some we may get some remainder which is other than 0. There are two possibilities: either the gx may divide x raised to r mx completely so that the remainder will be 0. In the second case, there may be some remainder. So if there is some remainder, subtract that remainder, which will be always r or fewer bits, from the original polynomial x raised to r mx, using once again the modulo 2 subtraction. And whatever we get is called as the tx, which is the checksum frame. And this tx, or the checksum frame, is the frame which is transmitted to the receiver. So that is very important. So we will rather see that with one example. Now the frame original data to be transmitted is these 10 bits which we can see. Now the polynomial or the generator polynomial that both the sender and receiver have agreed with is x raised to 4 plus x plus 1, and that accounts to the data bits. Why? Because this is x raised to 4, so 1 into x raised to 4, plus there is no x raised to 3 and x raised to 2 terms, that's why there are 2 zeros. Once again there is x raised to 1, that's why this one, and the last 1 into x raised to 0, that's why this 1. So we get the generator polynomial, or the coefficients of the generator polynomial, in this way. So as the degree is 4, we need to append 4 zeros, as we have seen previously, at the lower end of this particular data frame. So now, as you can see here, these are the original data bits to which we have appended those 4 zeros, and this now becomes x raised to r into m of x, as we have seen previously, x raised to r m of x. So this is that thing. Now we would divide this particular thing with the coefficient of the generator polynomial that we have seen here. So when we divide, as we can see, because of the values present here, we can divide 1 1 0 1 0 by 1 0 0 1 1 in this way. Well, for the first term we can take the division like this. Well, this can be divided into 1 0 0 1 1 with first 1, that accounts to the value 1 0 0 1 For example, the modulo 2, as we have seen previously, 0 1 XOR is 1, 1 1 XOR is 0, 0 XOR 0 is 0, 1 XOR 0 is 1, and 1 XOR 1 is 0, which is not taken obviously. And that's how 1 0 0 1, and we are taking the next one down here. So that exactly becomes the dividend, and that's why once again we are taking 1 here. That makes it all zeros. We take one more from the right side, but as long as it is less than number of bits from as compared to the dividend, we cannot divide, and that's why we go on putting zeros until we get a term which can be divided by 10011 as here, and now that is once again divided by the dividend, and in this way it is carried out until we get a remainder which is 10. Here we do get a remainder. Now we know that by the logic of this algorithm, while being transmitted, the Tx will be calculated, which will be the integral multiple of the Gx, and that's how we need to subtract this remainder from x raised to r m of x, and that's how we subtract 10 from this particular thing, which is x raised to r mx. And when this subtraction is also done modulo 2, that's why if you consider this term and 10, there are two zeros here, so 0 minus 0 will be 0, I mean 0 XOR 0 will be 0, and 0 XOR 1 will be 1. The rest of the things will be same as there, and that's how we get the Tx here, which is to be transmitted, and this is what is transmitted at the receiver. Now when the receiver receives that, once again it will divide this, because it doesn't know whether the error has occurred or not. It simply divides this particular thing as this by the generator polynomial, and in the division, in the best case when there are no errors, the receiver should not get any obviously remainder. But if there were some errors, receiver is bound to get some remainder which is other than 0, and that's how the receiver can correctly detect that there has been an error if the remainder is other than 0. So we will now get the power of this particular method in detecting errors correctly. We will first consider when there are single bit errors. So rather than the Tx, some Tx plus Ex arrives. So Tx is what is supposed to arrive, and there were some errors, and they happen to be matching or be detected or be represented by this equation Ex, where each individual one in this Ex represents an inverted bit. So for the receiver, whatever it has got, that received term has to be divided by the generator polynomial. So it tries to divide the Tx plus Ex combined by Gx. But we know that the Tx was an integral multiple of Gx. That's why Tx upon Gx will always become 0, the quotient. Hence, the total equation Tx plus Ex upon Gx efficiently, or effectively becomes Ex upon Gx. In that process, the terms in Ex which are happen to correspond to the polynomials containing Gx. For example, in our case, the Gx was x raised to 4 plus x plus 1. And if there are some terms in Ex which correspond with these terms, those errors or those particular factors will not be detected. They will slip by, and all other errors will be caught because there will be some remainder here. So if in the case of 1-bit error, as we've seen here, that will be one set in Ex. So that will be any x in the overall term. So let us say consider x of I, where I indicates which term that was in error, which bit that was in error. Here, if Gx contains two or more terms, as we have seen there, x raised to 4 plus x plus 1, there were three terms. In this case, if there was a single bit in Ex which was in error, and Gx contains more than that terms, I mean two or more terms, Gx will never divide Ex completely. So all single bit errors will be detected in this way. Similarly, it can also be proved mathematically how the multi-bit errors can be sufficiently detected. Maybe there are some burst error, 2 errors, some 3 errors, some 4 errors, and so on. They can as well be detected by a proper choice of Gx. Importantly, a polynomial code with R check bits will detect all burst errors of length less than or equal to R. So with those mathematical calculations, certain polynomials have been become international standards. For example, in IEEE 802, a polynomial that you can see here, x raised to 32. This is not x32, x raised to 32 plus x raised to 26 plus x raised to 23 and so on up till the last term. This is a polynomial. You must take all those as powers of x. They are wrongly printed as x32 here. So x raised to 32 plus x raised to 26, that's a polynomial that has become one such polynomial which is an international standard for the generator polynomial Gx. So this is how today we have seen the error detecting codes and actual codes like parity, checksum, and lastly the CRC were seen. Thank you.